Butterfly Volunteers were launched at the Norwich University Hospital in June 2019 in collaboration with the Anne Robson Trust. Butterflies provide compassionate listening, comfort and companionship for patients and often their families in the last days and hours of life. In collaboration with ART, we hold a shared mission that no one should die alone. I'm Caroline Stevens, the Butterfly Volunteer Coordinator at the Norwich Hospital, and I'd like to introduce Mary, Chris, Leela and Barbara, who will talk a little bit about their experiences volunteering as butterflies at the Norwich.
I remember a very elderly lady who was alone on a ward and waiting for transport to go back to her care home. She was at the end of life and she knew that, and she was really keen to tell me about her childhood, and her memories were obviously very dear to her about her time with her mother and father and her siblings. Anyway, at the end of that conversation, she said to me, "Thank you very much for listening to me and for listening to my story." And that really made me feel that I had made a difference to her in probably the last day of her life.
Barbara, I think you've got a story for us as well.
Yes, one of my experiences after a couple of months of volunteering was I visited a patient, a very elderly lady who was unconscious, and she had a lady with her who I assumed to be her daughter, and I introduced myself and just said what I was there for, and she looked at me and she said, "Really?" So I said, "Yes, this is a service that we're doing." So I said, "You know, I can sit with your mum if you." And she said, "Oh no, it's not my mum, it's my aunt." So I sort of said, "Oh," she said, "Actually," she said, "my mum has been admitted to hospital this morning at the NNA." She said, "And I haven't been able to go and see her because I don't want to leave my aunt because she was in the last day of her life." So she said, "What time can I book you for?" So I said, "You don't book. I'm here now. If you will." She said, I can go and see my mum?" I said, "Yes, go and see your mum. I'll sit with your aunt until you get back." "What time have I got to be back?" she said. I said, "You haven't." I said, "I'm going to be here." And she went off, and anyway, she came back after about an hour and 20 minutes. And she had found her mum, she'd established her mum was okay, and she was just going to then sit back with her elderly aunt, hold her hand. And I just felt as though that was helping the relative who didn't know where to go first in the hospital. And she was absolutely astounded at the service that we were able to provide.
Yeah, and it's what we'd hope for. I think, certainly, personally speaking, if it were my mum or dad in hospital and I was struggling to stay the whole time, it'd be lovely to think there was somebody who could be with them so they weren't alone.
I think in this current climate with so many patients who've got COVID, who've died alone, it's so sad for both sides, for the relatives and for the patient. And I think that's probably some of the most fulfilling patients that I've sat for as a butterfly.
Yeah.
And I think it's a help for the relatives to know that at least there's somebody there holding their relative's hand.
Chris, you said you're quite new to butterfly volunteering. What made you want to volunteer for this role?
I just thought I wanted to do something at the hospital, but I wasn't sure. I thought about doing hospital radio, but I'd be absolute rubbish at that. He told me about butterflies, you see, and I thought, yeah, I think I'll give it a go. My family, my children were horrified at the thought. And, you know, they said, "Well, how are you going to cope with that?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. If I don't, I don't." When I went home, I really felt good about it. So I thought, well, I've done a bit of good, because even if it was making a cup of coffee for somebody, the family, or if I was in there on my own, I just felt, you know, it was good.
My biggest thing is to take the fear out of dying. And whenever you, certainly when I talk to people about me taking this role on as the coordinator, that's going to be, you know, really sad. And I just want to take the fear out of things and talk about dying and death more, because I think it's part of life. It happens to all of us. You know, we don't have any choice over that. And if we can get people talking about it, about what our wishes are and how we want it to be, then it makes things easier for everybody when it actually does happen.